real quick, what is cancer?
Uncontrolled cellular growth is how I would define it. It's interesting to try to define it, and I think as we are learning more and more about cancer, it's indisputable at this point that it is a natural process in the body to develop precancerous and early stage cancerous cells. And it's actually a challenge now within modern medicine because we have scanning technologies that are so exacting and detailed now. We're now able to find it all at early stages, and we're finding a lot of it that we don't even have a clue will one day cause a problem or not. So there's the risk of over medicalization, and that's why you see statistically that mammograms, unless you're at high risk, are questionable in how effective they are, because they certainly help save some lives, but then they over medicalize a bunch of lives. Or prostate cancer, where now, unless you have an aggressive, fast growing cancer, which is different, the modern medical attitude is often just like, let's just wait and monitor this, because you'll probably die of something else. You'll die with the prostate cancer instead of from the prostate cancer, is something often said. So when cancer is a problem, cancerous cells are our own cells, right? To be clear, they're not. It's not an infection, but it's our own cells. Now, what causes it? You get into all sorts of things, and certainly I would say, one thing when in public health discussions of cancer that gets to me the most in a bad way is that we don't really talk about prevention, true prevention, which in my mind, step number one is stopping the production and release of known carcinogens into the environment. Like, you'd think that'd be pretty obvious, right? But there's a lot of money behind that, so it never gets discussed. It never gets, not by those folks, right? It's always a war on cancer, right? How about a war on carcinogens to start that out? But doesn't go there. So cancer is a problem. Cancer is a risk for us when it either grows in situ, meaning localized, and you get a tumor that begins to interfere with function of an organ, for example, and it just growing large enough that organ is no longer able to function properly. So that's one way that cancer can cause health challenges. Or if it metastasizes and spreads through our blood and through our lymph, and then begins to grow tumors and masses in other places. And cancer cells don't generally go through apoptosis, which is like regulated, scheduled cell death, right? Our cells live and die like we do. They have their lifespans, and different types of cells have different lifespans. Neurons have long lives, and red blood cells have shorter lives, and so on. So, but cancer cells tend to thwart that, so they continue to live and they continue to multiply, and they are great consumers of energy. So we begin to become highly malnourished as well. So we get interference with organ function depending on where those tumors are and what they're doing, and we get a kind of starvation from within from all of the energy usage that this uncontrolled growth is sucking from us nutritionally. So if cancer cells remain isolated, small, not growing much, not spreading, that's not a problem. So like a lot of things, if we change our framework and think about, it's not about cancer or no cancer, it's about what is it that triggers something to then become a problem. And this relates to, so we could keep talking about cancer, but I kind of got off on a tangent from your really good question, which is our place on the planet. And so, I'm certainly not the first one to make that analogy. For instance, I don't know if you're familiar with Vandana Shiva, the Indian activist, and she says, like, capitalism is a cancer, right? If anything based on uncontrolled growth, where the more growth the better ad infinitum, that is not health, that's cancer. And I even shared this recently with a business class I did for my herbal students, right? So business meaning like, how do you make a livelihood from being an herbalist, which that resonates more with me than the word itself. Although the word business derives from the Old English for anxiety. So that's another question, another interesting thing to talk about. But that said, you don't have to buy into what we're being told is the case, which is being successful in life means always growing. So your income always increasing, your business always growing, and if it's successful, sales are always more than they were last year. That's not sustainable. So very much, if you look at modern role of humans on the planet right now, that's kind of what we're doing. It's just uncontrolled growth and consumption of resources, just like a cancer within our body. But we don't have to be that way. Like I'm not a cynic on that level of thinking this is human nature in any way. We have been here on the planet for a long time without being that way, and we have it within our capacity to not be that way, to be more in symbiosis, right? So that's really the question. And what you're getting at, are we in symbiosis as a member of an ecology, as a member of an ecosystem? So like our individual cells, or like our mitochondria within our cells that are descendants of bacteria living within our cells to mutually symbiotically coexist with the human body, or all of the bacteria in our microbiome, in our gut, or on our skin, 99.9, probably higher percentage of bacteria and microbes are either harmless or beneficial to us as humans, and it's just a small number that we might need to be somewhat concerned about, right? It's the exception, not the rule. And so symbiosis and mutualism, thankfully, is being more and more recognized within ecology, within science, within medicine. Not enough, not quickly enough, but it speaks to our role on the planet, because I agree with you very much. These are fractal layers, right? So even with the microbiome, there's often this isolated kind of discussion that goes on within holistic health of like how to promote your own healthy microbiome, as if the foods you eat and the probiotic pills that you swallow is going to really get you there, and it's not. I mean, we do those things because we're in this world. We do what we need to do individually. So I'm not saying to not do those things, but that will never get us there, because our microbiomes are imbalanced and depleted, because our ecology is imbalanced and depleted. One of my favorite studies, if we didn't talk about this last time, if we want to get geeky about a study out of Finland on the microbiome and allergies, it speaks to that very much. But the point being, I agree completely. What is within is without. We happen to live on this particular fractal layer of existence, and there are things both smaller than us and larger than us. And so that concept of Gaia is simply a larger fractal layer of what an organism is. Because if we look at ourselves and see, as an organism, I'm actually an ecosystem. I'm a symbiosis of many different organisms working together, both the human cell itself, which is the product of endosymbiosis, and all the microbiome and so on and so forth, right? And then we go out a layer and we realize we're eating foods and using herbs as medicine. And so we're in relationship with all of this, right? We've co-evolved with all of this. And so can you take that to a layer, a fractal layer that is beyond our direct perception of planetary? And then, of course, we could wonder what comes next. And that's an interesting conversation, too, because there's always something larger and something smaller, right? And there are people who think about that, even that, what's that next level then? And that's interesting. But that's that concept of Gaia. And if you look at the way the Earth's organism works, the regulatory structures in our atmosphere, in the soil, in the oceans, is very much similar to the same negative feedback loop regulatory mechanisms that our own endocrine system uses and our nervous system uses, and it's just one layer up.